Welcome to the Transforming Trauma podcast. Transforming Trauma is presented by the NARM Training Institute. I'm your host, Emily Ruth, and I'm so glad you've joined us today. Hi, Transforming Trauma listeners. We are so excited to share the power of healing from complex trauma with all of you. It's inspiring to know that so many of you tune in to learn about the personal and collective healing that can come from resolving complex trauma. We are thrilled to offer the Inner Circle, NARM's online learning community. Each month, members receive direct mentorship from NARM creator Dr. Lawrence Heller, NARM training director Brad Kammer, and other NARM faculty through live webinars. These webinars deconstruct the various elements of complex trauma, including issues related to developmental, relational, cultural, and intergenerational trauma. They will also guide you through a step-by-step process of learning how to integrate NARM into your work by sharing NARM demonstration videos of client sessions and then pulling up the hood to describe how NARM is being used with real clients to resolve complex trauma. The NARM Inner Circle is a great place to start your exploration of NARM. Whether you're a mental health or other helping professional, educator, or just interested in addressing complex trauma, there's a place for you within the Inner Circle community. You, our Transforming Trauma listeners, can receive $100 off your annual membership when using the code TransformingTrauma15 at checkout. Visit narmtraining.com/innercircle to sign up and for more information. Today's episode is with Mohammed Kathrada. Mo is an adolescent and family trauma therapist. He also works in the field of addiction at the WAVE Clinic, a residential program for teenagers and young adults in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Mo is passionate about making sure that the young people he works with have real opportunity for connection, stability, and recovery. Please enjoy this conversation with Mohammed Kathrada. All right, we are here with Mohammed Kathrada. Hello and welcome to the podcast, Mo.
Hi, thanks for the invite. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, we're so happy to have you. As you know, we usually start out our interviews here with the question, what would you like for listeners to get out of the interview today?
I've been thinking about this question quite a lot, and there's a lot, and I try to narrow it down to one intention. And I think with just the demands of the world at the moment, an invitation for a lot of disconnection and self-pressuring. Listeners will get out of this that there is hope for especially young people, because those are the people that I work with mostly, and I'm a young person in recovery as well. A hope for more intentional living through connection.
I appreciate that. Intentional living through connection. That's great. Awesome. Well, I'd love to hear just a little bit about the work that you're doing in the field of complex trauma.
Yeah, I work for a mental health residential treatment center that caters mainly for young adults. So we work with people from the age of 13 up to 28, 30. So it's quite a big range. And we're based in Malaysia, and it's an international treatment center. So people travel from different places of the world to come and stay with us for a duration of a period of time. And I work there as a therapist in advanced training. And I work with the young people in group therapy and in individual therapy as well.
Great. And so I'm curious how you're holding and how you kind of define complex trauma. How are you holding that term?
I think complex trauma in itself, sort of the word complex, is very broad. And I think there's the sort of usual definition that comes with the relational trauma, attachment trauma, intergenerational trauma, adverse childhood experiences, and it being under this big umbrella. And for me, when I think of complex trauma, I think to the sort of most simple term, and simple and complex doesn't go together, but the simple term that it's anything that disconnects somebody from themselves and from the greatness of just being them.
And I noticed you smile as you said that. It seems to really be coming from your heart, the greatness that is them.
Yeah. I think both personally and professionally, I think that relates to me as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Can we talk about what led you to be working in the way that you do and with complex trauma?
Yeah. I think there's quite a long story from that. And
Yeah.
it's sort of my own journey led me to work with helping other people. I've been in recovery from substance abuse, and in my sort of early teens going to treatment or receiving residential treatment and being introduced to a complete different side. I think where I'm from, I'm originally from Mauritius, and some of our language, which is a slang of French, does not have all the words for feelings. So we sort of just go over it. Nobody really sort of talks about it. Very rarely there's feelings in communication. So for me, it was an introduction to a different approach, and maybe just, finding a way to express what was going on inside. I did treatment quite a few times and it not working out and going back again and again. And in my own recovery, sort of finding a passion at the end to help others. It was really just suggested to me to start doing some training in addiction counseling to help others in a professional capacity as well. And at that time, still finding my path and still finding where I'm going, I took the suggestion and went along with it, found out that I really love it and I was good at it. And it sort of just flew past. I had very bad ideas about education and sort of said, I'm not going to do education again. But that felt easy. And I went with the flow, and I was doing that in South Africa, which then led me to working in residential treatment centers. And I did a few work in South Africa, and it took a big leap of faith and came to Thailand, where I got to work into residential treatment centers there. And at that time, the idea for me was to sort of work out with as many different cultures as I can, because I was very intrigued and interested to see different people from different backgrounds and sort of just relating and working with them from different cultures. And again, through some conversation, I found out about the Wave Clinic, which I'm working at now. And that led me to starting my work there and growing in my professional career.
Yeah, I'm hearing like an appreciation for diversity and working with, a wide variety of folks from all over. And then I'm also hearing how important your own lived experience was for you to bring you to this work. And so it sounds personal to you as well.
Absolutely. And I think this is something that the young adults that I work with, they can see that somehow. They can see the lived experience, and there's something that resonates with that, with also bringing that in the room and bringing that or in group setting, working with them, that they're not alone doing.
Yeah. So I'm curious, what led you to NARM and what led you to getting trained? And there's a lot coming. I'm just excited to hear how you're using NARM and how it's landing for you. But yeah, first, can we start with what led you to NARM?
Yeah. At first in working in this field, I sort of restrict myself a little bit and went with addiction counseling and said that, that's the only thing that I'm going to do and I'm going to help people with it. And as I kept working and sort of kept meeting a lot of young adults that are coming in the treatment center, one thing just kept coming up. There was trauma everywhere with everything that they came in with. And at the clinic, we sort of work with eating disorders quite a bit and addictions and any various mental health difficulties. But every one of them sort of had trauma at the back of it. So my interest grew and I started looking through it. And I did go a little bit obsessive about finding out about trauma and reading all the books. And one of my colleagues always sort of tell me that, I'm not sure whether you're doing this in a very healthy way. You're sort of constantly trying to look for the next training. But I was trying to look for something that lands and something that fit for me. And it broadened my understanding of trauma. It broadened my understanding of how to work with trauma. And we had quite a while back, we had a trauma training that came to Malaysia. And I volunteered, I put my hand up and I said, okay, I'll be the person that sits in the chair and that the person was demonstrating with. And something shifted in that training for myself. And I wasn't sure what kind of modality the guy was trained in. And over time, I sort of heard that he was trained in NARM. And I instantly went, ooh, what's that? I want to know about that. And I started reading the book. And then I went a little bit, again, obsessive. I went to listen to all the podcasts. I went to look at all the YouTube videos and the book. And it sort of fit and it landed for me. And I think definitely the relational piece of that model was what landed the most for me.
Yes.
And it was bringing me into this room as a human being. And I loved that. And the other piece that really interested me was the bottom up and top down. And throughout my searching, I was finding different models that were one or the other and not really one that sort of fits and encompasses all of it. When I found out about it and then I contemplated the training quite a lot of time, that's what led me to get the training in NARM and getting introduced to NARM.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm curious, I know that the training is really fresh for you, but I'm wondering if there's ways that you're already finding that you're able to integrate the NARM model into the work that you do.
Yeah, I think for me, very much with trainings in general, I sort of do it on one day and on the next day I'm trying to apply it. That's usually how I see whether it fits for me or doesn't fit for me. And I can see what's coming directly out of training. It's just come in my sessions or in the groups that I'm running. And definitely from going through the training and then translating that into the work, there's a lot. There's a lot that's sort of fitting and working in the way that NARM works. But one of the few different things that has definitely sort of landed in my work with the young adults has been around the intentional piece and just really connecting with what is it really that they want and just really connecting to that, which gives them some, in my perception, and what feels like, it's not something that's coming from me. It's not something that's coming from their families. It's not something that's coming from the world. It's coming from inside. In saying this, it's not very easy for them to do that as well. And a lot of the time when I've asked, what is it that you really want or what would you like for yourself? And the response that I often get is, I'm not exactly sure what you're asking. And that connection to the heart. And because there's so much of disconnection, there's so much organization, that connection to really being attuned to what is it that they want is different. And other times it goes from going very much around and sort of throws in 10 different things. It's usually for me sort of about just filtering that through and getting to really what's the connection in the heart. The other piece that's definitely worked, because I've seen a lot of people that I've worked with that relates or identifies a lot with shame. And just sort of changing that from the noun to the verb of I shame myself, or what ways that is. I've had people just in the recent few weeks just going with, that's different. And just them hearing that, it's very, very moving.
It's a powerful question. And like you pointed to, it really gets right to the heart of the matter. I mean, it's a heart question. What is it that you really want for yourself? And if they've never been asked that, I mean, I've heard other, clinicians sharing that in working with, adolescents and young people, it's very possible that they've never had anyone in their lives ask them that question. And so there's a lot of orienting to what that even means. Like you said, I'm not even sure what you're asking because it's so kind of foreign to a lot of us that have, cut ourselves off from what it is that we really want. So I appreciate you naming that. I wondered if there's any stories of like struggle or any of the young people that you've worked with that has been inspiring for you in dealing with complex trauma.
Yeah, definitely lots of inspiration. One that comes to mind as you're saying this is I was working with somebody that sort of had a very similar experience to me in terms of going to treatment centers a few times and sort of coming out of the treatment center and going back in the same pattern. And every time it sort of get progressively worse and closer to life-threatening difficulties. And I remember that person sort of coming in and really just not being able to see any hope and not being able to see how their life is going to be different. And sort of through relating through that self-agency piece and finding what it is that they are doing that are continuing those patterns. What was their relationship with an identification with those struggles? because that's been a very big piece around a lot of the time. What I found quite a few young adults say is, I need to struggle to keep my attachments.
Mm.
So when they see treatment progressing or them getting more connected with themselves, with others, there's red alarm bells that are going on, and they do everything in their power to sort of unravel back and go back to, or finding something in that time. Actually, I'm struggling with it, because deep down there's this big fear of, if I stop struggling, people will leave me.
Mm.
And if I stop identifying with that, I'll be left alone. And to sort of get back to that one inspiring story in that young person's life, as they were going along, there has been sort of a disidentification. When the sort of struggle came back, always comes back at the back of moving one step forward or one step closer to where they want to be. And they were able to identify, oh, maybe, I've got this pattern that's going on again, that I am not settling with being okay with myself. And just by seeing that and understanding it and acknowledging that, there has been a shift and a move that continues to take them closer to where they want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that, to me, when we sort of do horse riding together as part of the program, and it was very nice with that one particular young adult that I'm talking about, that she went to horse riding, and usually there's a lot of self-pressuring that's going on. And after horse riding, there was a lot of connection, and just seeing her be and not having to do anything, not having to pressure herself, was amazing.
I love that piece that you're pointing out. She could just be and not feel like she had to do anything to be able to be in this space. She could just show up as herself. Wow, that is really powerful. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I'm wondering, if there's anything else that you've learned in your process and working with complex trauma that's maybe from a personal standpoint or from a professional standpoint, that you might like others to know.
Yeah, I think that ties a little bit for me into that struggle when you talk about, if there was any struggle, inspiring stories. But that usually is the struggle. And the one thing that I've definitely seen times and times and times is that there is no time on somebody working on themselves. There's no time that can define that. And often especially with residential treatment, there's sort of external times constraint, whether that's coming from external circumstances or the families or insurance companies. There's always a time constraint somewhere. And what I've definitely learned is that the time cannot be defined. And I get that question very often from families, and that they go, so when do you think the young adult is going to be better? And there's some sort of expectation in that you're the clinician, you should know, you should
Right.
fix that person. So when is it going to be? Can you give us a time so we know when to expect our young adult back, or what plan to do moving forward? And my answer to that times and times and times is that you can't put time on mental health. And if I am in the work with young adults with complex trauma, if I am putting a time in that, there's a lack of agency, and there is a lack of a sense of autonomy. And usually where that always goes is towards rebellion, and that sort of disconnects more than it connects the person.
Yeah, you've named something really important, because not only, from a clinician standpoint, we don't want to be pressuring ourselves and trying to get a timeline, figure out a timeline for our client, but this is important for families and loved ones to know, when we have someone, in our field that is doing this work for themselves, that we can, as loved ones, create more spaciousness and support around allowing them to take whatever time it takes, and not put some kind of timeline or deadline, even in the back of our minds. Oh, I'm going to expect, my child to be fixed, quote, fixed by 28 days or whatever the time that they're in treatment. But that we as loved ones can really help support the spaciousness of the time that it takes.
And we've been very fortunate, I'll use the word fortunate, and we've been very fortunate to get a lot of families that has come to the wave and sort of committing to whatever it takes. And we've had people, which to me has been very different from the other experience that I got from residential treatment. We have people that, have stayed in long-term treatment for us for a year and a half to 2 years, and they've just taken their time and they were able to move at their pace with what was to their capacity. And as they slowly built up their own psychobiological capacity to take on more and to move through that.
What a wonderful thing to be able to have that spaciousness and time to do the work. I remembered reading that where you're working. So is it the Wave? Is that what the center? So I read that you had people from all over, from the UK, from Europe, Middle East, Australia, I remember reading, and Russia. Kind of like you named before, there's a diverse population that you're working with. I wondered if there's anything there in terms of like cultural differences that you're taking in as you're working with these young folks.
Yeah, there's a part of our program that we call global citizenship, and we sort of incorporate many diverse cultural celebrations, many diverse cultural groups and activities that comes together. And the essence of it is it's a sense of community building and drawing from all the strength of what many, many cultures and traditions have had for years and bringing that all together. And I think that's a bit personal to me as well, because I've been sort of moving around in the world. And that is often a big question. And for a lot of our young adults that come, that's often a big question when they get asked, so where are you from? There's sort of never a really straight answer for them. And that plays together with identifying with their own personal identity and where they are coming from, because sometimes they have moved around in different worlds. And I had a conversation a year and a bit ago with a very bright young girl that is a friend of mine. She is little and she's moved around in a few different places. And we were having this conversation from a place of relating. And she used the term, I'm a global citizen. And I've adopted that from her. And now when people ask, where are you from? It's quite difficult to sort of go all over the place. And I go, I'm a global citizen.
Oh.
In our program, it brings a lot of closeness together and just getting some understanding of community living and cultural living.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. When I asked that question, I wasn't really sure. I didn't know much about the work that you did. So I didn't even know that you're really drawing from different cultures and bringing in, like you said, was it celebrations and different things from all of these different cultures. So I'm so glad that you shared that with us because that feels really important.
Yeah, we have our program which has different pillars, and we see a big importance in the global citizenship area and that connection to a greater sense of the world.
Yeah, I love that. I wondered if I could also, before we pressed record, we were kind of talking about a line that I read, I think it was on your LinkedIn, of kind of a theme that your center has adopted. I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit, because that really hit me, that landed.
Yeah, it is a powerful line. And it's, as I was saying to you earlier, it's not my line. It's a Fond of the Waves line. And the line being, we don't believe that people fail treatment, we believe that treatment fails people. And in that, it is also down to the essence of creating the wave as well, where we were committed to working with the person and working in what works for the person. And usually in quite a lot of residential treatment centers, there's a set program, and most of the time people will go through them. And in my experience, I've been to a few treatment centers as well, go through the program, tick the boxes, and now's your time to go. And in my own personal experience, in some of the treatment centers that I have been to, I did everything that was there. And I ticked the boxes, but there was no connection through it. And just walking the walk and just going with whatever it is. And for me, it became a little bit dangerous, because by the end of going through treatment a few times, my belief in that treatment was possible, or there was a possibility for me to get better, was gone.
Yeah.
And when I went to treatment at that point, I was only looking for a very quick detox, and then I was going to try to get on with life very quickly. Something changed for me in treatment the last time at that point where I sort of connected with the work. But before that, because I've been through it and I went with the idea that treatment doesn't work for me. So with that line and the idea around the wave is to sort of committing to trying many different ways and not having a very set way that every young adult have to go through. And for some people that has include in their treatment education at some point and getting them to go through. And for others that hasn't include education and that has include, volunteering and getting a job and whatever works. And we as a team sort of go out and find all the resources that are available around us to make options available. And in turn, what I've seen that has given a lot of the young adults is that they have choices.
Yeah.
And many of the young adults come to us and the idea is that there is no hope. There's nothing for me in this world that I want to do. There's nothing for me in this world that I would have a passion to do or would even try. And a lot of the time it has been because the path has already been created for them and they were just following through.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing the treatment and connecting back with themselves and now connecting back to joy and passion, they get to sort of have a say in, okay, this is what I want to do. And it doesn't become a split part of treatment. We believe that that's the treatment, that person developing their own identity and their own sense of belonging in this world where they belong.
Yeah, I'm really hearing you speak to the self-agency. Like that's not just a part of the treatment, like that is the treatment, providing a space where they can really, again, even ask themselves that question, what is it that I really want for myself? And then having the choices, the options available, how powerful that is.
That takes the essence of people not failing treatment and sort of just working with what works with them. And I think there's an element of this that brings the relational model within the model. That is, even in the capacity of working in groups or in individual sessions with the young adult, it is whatever works. And that brings the relational aspect for me, at least when I'm working with them and just being in relating to the person in that moment.
Yeah, that was the other part that kind of landed for me in what you were saying is that I'm really hearing that you're honoring the individual and what their needs are, that you're really tuning in to how you can support them in their own individual way and that they're not like put on some track like everyone else and everyone's going through the same track, that you're really tuning in and attuning to what their needs are. And that's so beautiful. Well, I have really enjoyed this time with you. And I wondered if there was anything else that you'd like our listeners to know about the work that you're doing and maybe also how folks can find the center that you work with, if there's anyone interested in the kind of work that you're doing. And wondered if you could give us that information.
Yeah, you can find it just Googling the Wave Clinic. It's based in Malaysia at the moment. And there you can find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. It's the Wave Clinic, or the website, thewaveclinic.com. And we love to reach out to people and we try to make connections with many different people from different parts of the world, because that's just something that we do. And I think back to where NARM fits into working with treatment is that connection is such a great piece in that. Connection is sort of at the center of it all. And I believe through connection, everything is possible. And there is sometimes a limitation with the world or sometimes a limitation that are imposed around. But with connecting with myself and just being, it's possible to grow to the capacity that I have. And it's just something that's coming to me at the moment. And we were speaking about this. One of my colleagues was sharing with us about a fig tree and how they sort of grow inside other trees and then they wrap themselves around the tree. So their function is to sort of stop the main tree from growing and feeds off it and sort of take over with the length of time. And we were talking about this and sort of relating that to trauma and how trauma constricts the development of the self and doesn't allow us to grow into our own capacity, and the work being around getting the fig tree off and getting out of those constrictions, getting out of what keeps us in the same patterns, what keeps us sabotaging and growing into our own liveness.
I love that image. I really latch on to images, and I'm just sitting with that and thinking about that. Thank you for sharing that. Well, Mo, this has been really lovely. Thank you for sharing your time with us. And we'll be sure to put in the show notes of how to connect with you and the work that you're doing. And I just really appreciate you coming on the show today.
Yeah, it's been good to speak to you and just connecting.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for joining us for today's episode. To find more about our guest and their work, check the show notes or visit us at narmtraining.com/transformingtrauma. Are you interested in deepening your understanding of NARM? We are thrilled to offer the Inner Circle, NARM's online learning community. Each month, members receive direct mentorship from NARM creator Dr. Lawrence Heller, NARM training director Brad Kammer, and other NARM faculty through live webinars. The Inner Circle is also a hub for the international NARM community, where people working with complex trauma from around the world come together to connect, network, and develop trauma-informed projects to benefit our world. Visit narmtraining.com/innercircle to sign up and for more information. Our Transforming Trauma listeners can receive $100 off your annual membership when using the code TransformingTrauma15 at checkout. Thanks to Andrea Klunder and the Creative Imposter Studios for producing and editing, to Tori Essex for our album art, and to Brad Kammer for the creation of this podcast. We look forward to building community, connection with you, and changing the world by transforming trauma.